I heard one of these infectious disease people say this could go on for a year and a half or two. So I don't know if that's true, but I think we're trying to imagine PathNorth and doing some other things, which we're going to start unveiling them. We told you about the story idea, which I think is going to be great, recording your stories. And then in addition, Rick can do a much longer version for your family. And on that one, I just want to tell you one thing I did when I was in my 20s. I had an amazing grandmother who died at 91, and I recorded her on little cassette recordings for about 15 hours, which now I've lost those. I have no idea where they are, but they'll surface someday. But what my thinking was, I wanted to hear in her own voice what she thought of life, meaning, hopes, disappointments, all kinds of things. And that's what we want to do with each of us, because for our kids, for them to have the chance to hear from us someday, and our own way of thinking about things. And I think it's going to be a great thing for us to have, more important than we can even imagine. So excited about that. So let me say, we're in a polarized time, and as many of you know, in PathNorth, we invite people and their full stories. We aren't politically correct. If you're a Muslim, we want you to bring that aspect of your life into the conversation. If you're a Christian, whatever it is. So as long as it's authentically a part of your story. So, truth comes at us in lots of different ways. So I want one of the most famous poets in the world is a guy named Rumi, R-U-M-I, a Pakistani poet, Muslim poet. And I thought he had a good word for our time. And he said this, he said, there's a field beyond right and wrong, meet me there. And I thought, what a good truth for us to just ponder during these times when everything is red, blue, right, wrong, everything's a fight and a binary thing. Is it possible to move the conversation to beyond that, to a field where we can meet and really connect? So that's a thought I just had today as I was just pondering our world. So grateful that you all would take the time to be on this conversation. And I will now pass the baton to Adam Kaufman, a senior fellow with us at PathNorth. And we have a special friend that we're going to hear from today.
Great. Thank you, Doug. And hello, everybody. And hello in particular to Tasha, one of our members from the San Diego area. Thanks for being with us today.
You.
We sent out your bio ahead of time. I'm never one to read bios in front of people because usually the list is much longer than I would want to take time away from the real conversation we're going to have of all your accomplishments. But just trust me that this woman is quite accomplished and creative. Her creativity in particular is very enviable for me because I don't have that kind of creativity. She's also a super mom. Right now, she's been dealing with the pandemic with all men in her house. So we'll get into that a little bit. She's the sole female among 5 or 6 or 7 men. We'll get into that. But Tasha and I, we met at a conference in Albuquerque that Doug had us go to, hosted by the Franciscan monk, Father Richard Rohr. So that was about 5 years ago, Tasha.
Wow.
I know. And ever since then, I've enjoyed getting to know you and your husband and your family. We even met one of your sons in Europe during our Chamonix conference. So I really feel like we've succeeded in trying to do what we always talk about and getting to know each other at a deeper level. So I really like that. And I wanted to open up with just giving you some time to share with the group a little bit about you and your story. As Doug said, story matters so much. And PathNorth, we don't do a good enough job of bringing everyone to Southern California. So why don't you take this opportunity right now to share a little bit about what you've been up to?
Yeah. So I am home, like you said, it's me and 7 adult men living in our house right now. So I have been married for 25 years and I have 3 adult boys, and then we took in 2 extra. And so we're all quarantining here together. My husband and I are speakers on the corporate lecture circuit and artists, and we used to be on tour all over the world speaking about creativity and ingenuity, but now everything is completely shut down. So we won't be probably working for at least another year, I would say. And so we've really had to take some time to say, what does this look like? What does the pandemic mean for our family? What does it mean for our business, who we are and what we want to be in the world? One of the questions that we've been asking ourselves is this happening to us or is this happening for us? And trying to choose that this is happening for us and what can we learn out of it. Loss of income for the year, but our 3 adult men have all had to come home because of the pandemic. And when do you ever have that opportunity again to have 3 adult men in your
Definitely.
life?
So silver lining for sure.
Yeah.
Before we jump into your pandemic life, can we just get a quick summary of what is the Wahl Group that you're the executive director of?
Yeah,
And then
absolutely.
also maybe why, I'm really interested in the group hearing about why you started the butterfly effect and how that came about.
So actually, my husband and I did not plan on this life at all. I was a mom. I had 3 young boys at home. He was a partner in a firm. We were 29 years old. And one day he just said, I can't do this anymore. I can't go to work anymore and be inside this office with 4 walls. Like, there has to be something different. And I said, okay, like, I want you to be happy. We'll figure this out. So we called Eric's parents and we said, we have this crazy idea. Eric wants to be a speaker and he wants to paint live on stage. And if this doesn't work, can we move in with you guys? And they said, absolutely, bring our grandkids. So we just decided to go for this crazy thing. And so I started marketing. I'd put the kids down for a nap and I would start calling people and saying, hey, I know this amazing guy. His name is Eric Wahl, and he's a speaker and he speaks on creativity. I mean, I was like kind of making this up as I went along because we're building our plane as we're flying it.
We've all done that.
Yeah, right. We're all entrepreneurs. But Eric is an incredibly passionate, talented person. And I am an incredibly talented, passionate lover of him and this idea. And I think my enthusiasm came out. And all of a sudden, within about 5 years, between the 2 of us and these ideas and marketing and binding and loosing, we figured out how to put a program together, and I produced it and he was the talent. And we started traveling all around the world. And 10 years after that, we were doing 110 shows a year all over the world. Then we started writing books, doing films, doing some theater stuff. And it has just been a wild ride since then. We feel so lucky and blessed. We've had our kids come with us on the road. We've traveled internationally with them. We really pictured like white picket fence, 3 kids, a dog. We just thought we were going to have a regular kind of quiet life, but that wasn't part of the plan. And so I'm the executive director of the Art of Vision, which is basically our consulting and keynote speaking group. Out of that came our foundation. And I wanted to figure out a really unique way to give back to the world with our foundation. So I came up with this idea called the butterfly effect. And through that, now that has become at least half of the work that I do in the world is the butterfly effect. And so I'm the executive director of that and the creator of this little foundation that started as a crazy idea in my head. So is that what you were asking?
Yeah. I just wanted to give people a quick snapshot of your extremely creative and to me thrilling life. Seth has a couple of pictures of what the butterfly effect does. And around the world, you travel, and you can add to this summary, but around the world, you leave butterflies. These are larger ones here that you do the form of art in street art, but you also have smaller butterflies that you'll then leave in different communities and via social media. Look at these pictures and these colors, everybody. I can't talk and look at this at the same time, but it's really impressive. So you would leave the butterflies somewhere in some community all over the world, and then post that you did this, and the finder of the butterfly then can pick a charity of her or his choice that you will then help support. Do I have that right?
Yeah. So this all started, I was sitting in the living room with a group of 10 kids, and I said, tithe, like when you tithe, and they said, well,
Tithing, yeah.
tithing. And I thought, how am I going to explain to a bunch of teenagers what tithing is? They hadn't heard the terminology. So I said, okay, you guys, if I gave you 10 cookies and I asked you to give one cookie to someone that didn't have a cookie, would you be willing to give them that cookie? And they were like, yeah, I'd have like 9 cookies left. I said, okay, what if it was $10? I'm going to give you $10, but I want you to take $1 and I want you to give it to somebody that doesn't have a dollar and that needs that dollar. And they said, oh, okay, like I get the concept of this. And they said, but $1 is not going to do very much. I said, you're right. Okay, hypothetically, I'm going to give each of you $100. And I would be curious where you would give that money away. I'm going to give you $100, but you have to give it away. And they kind of went around and started talking, and they couldn't figure out exactly what it was, like where they would do this. So I said, all right, let me ask you 2 questions. I want to know what lights you up. So essentially, what is so beautiful and amazing in the world that you have to do it? And then the second question is, what breaks your heart? So what's so messed up in the world that you need to fix it? And that hour changed my life. Sitting there listening to those teenagers that I've had come play soccer, be at our house all the time, have to like look into their hearts and ask themselves those questions, and then come up with some answers of where would I give the $100. So like one of them wanted to give the money to cancer awareness because his grandma had cancer. Another girl loves animals, and so she wanted to give it to some sort of animal protection program. Another kid said, there's this boy on our soccer team who's a scholarship kid, and his toes are busting out of his cleats, and I would surprise him and put new cleats in his bag without him knowing what it was.
So your question, Tasha, excuse me, of what lights you up and what breaks your heart really helped them crystallize like tangible ideas around them.
Yes.
How old were they? You said teenagers. Were they like 13 or like 18?
15, 16 at the time. Yeah. So I'm listening to them, and over the next 5 days, I couldn't stop thinking about each of what their things that they would give the money to. And I thought, I want to figure out how to give them the money to do this, but I can't just give them the money. That's awkward and strange, and it may be inappropriate. Like, here's $100. So I came up with this crazy idea because I'd heard of geocaching, and I'm like, oh, what if I like geocache for charity? So my dad called me butterfly growing up. So I went and got a wooden butterfly, and I painted it. They're about this big, and I painted it. And I took it out and I hid it in our community, and I posted clues on social media, like geocaching. I just did the best that I could, and I put it up online. And I don't know if this is going to work or not, but I'm thinking, let's just see, it's a game. And within 20 minutes, there were 5 teams of people trying to find this butterfly. Because I said, the person that finds it gets $250 to the charity of your choice. And somebody found it, and I got to talk to them about their story and why they wanted to give to the United Veterans, because her dad was a veteran. It was actually Veterans Day. It was so perfect. And it was such an honor for me to write that check in her name. And then it was so fun. I started doing it every single week. And then the Union Tribune, our local paper, caught news of it, and they started advertising it. So I've got these wooden butterflies that are hiding all over San Diego, and there's these clues on social media, and the person that finds it gets to donate money to the charity of their choice. And every time someone found a butterfly, I got to hear what lights them up, what breaks their heart, and about the charity. And
have you chronicled all of those places, recipients?
Every single one.
Is that on your website? I don't think I've ever seen where you, okay.
It's on my website. So every butterfly drop is there.
Has anyone ever said PathNorth lights them up, and that would be the charity of their choice? That would be a good,
that's a really good idea.
That is a good one. Well, let me ask you this, Tasha. Do you think that this period of COVID has increased people's interest in creativity and art? I know in my world it has. If we can't go into the office, more people are pursuing other things. And have you seen like more activity on the Butterfly website or followers, social media? Are you doing more of this right now?
It's been a really interesting time of innovation for the Butterfly Effect. And I also think for our business, I mean, everything's going virtual. So I've had a lot of the people that I work with, they do virtual drops now. So they virtually hide something. And a lot of this is the colleges that I work with. UCSB and UC Stanislaus. There's a couple in the UC system where they're doing these virtual drops and people find them. And then, yes, we're able to donate money back to the charity of their choice.
Awesome.
Also, I think the butterfly drops are outside, so social distancing isn't a problem. And then the big social butterflies, those are really taking off right now because people are looking for a place to go and do something good. So the social butterflies are the big street art butterflies that amplify a cause on social media. And people are really using social media right now to amplify the causes of their charity, to amplify the things that they want to say to the world.
So when we were preparing for this call, you talked to me a little bit about an idea. I hadn't heard it phrased this way, but what happens on the other side of boredom? You're discovering right now some new things with your family. What can happen on the other side of boredom? At PathNorth, Doug's very articulate talking about how solitude can be a positive, loneliness becomes the problem. So what have you been discovering either about yourself or at home on this other side of boredom during the pandemic?
I think one of the gifts that the pandemic has brought to our family is this necessity of slowing down. We were on the move constantly. And so I don't think I realized how tired I was. I don't think I realized how I have a really high capacity for doing things, but I didn't realize how much I was running. And this ability during this time to kind of slow down, it took about 4 to 5 weeks before I could actually take what I was learning and recognize that my body needed this for healing.
Yeah, decompress.
Yeah, I needed to decompress. And until I unloaded my mind of all of the things that were filling it, I didn't have space for new ideas and new innovation and new time. So I had to get to the point where I was so bored. And then I had to sit in the boredom and understand what was on the other side of the boredom. And generally what's on the other side of the boredom is incredible new ideas that I would have never had otherwise. So I'm really grateful. And our whole family is experiencing that. They've all had to come home from school, from work, from study abroad. And we're all together having to come up with new ways of seeing the world, new possibilities for the environment, new possibilities for politics, conversations that we wouldn't possibly be having had we not had the time to kind of let everything settle.
In the mental space, right.
Yeah.
I love the way you talk about this other side of boredom. And I want folks to ask questions. So you can email me questions, or excuse me, chat me questions and even ideas on what you've discovered on this other side of boredom, as Tasha puts it. So I'll give you guys a few minutes to send those questions to me. But you had some specific activities that I think that you and your children have discovered, like skill of the day and some other things.
Yeah. So when you have a house of 8 adults and nobody's working and nothing to do, like we needed things to fill our time productively. So we came up with this, it's called the skill of the day, and it would rotate between all of us. So every day somebody for 20 minutes would get up and they would deliver the skill of the day. So and depending on who was doing this, it was so funny. So mine were just kind of obvious. I did like air fryer 101. Hello, you can help me in the kitchen. That would be great. So I taught them how to make a bunch of things with the air fryer. Or one day I did country line dancing. But the boys came up with such funny ones. They did the art of origami as romance, juggling. They taught us what TikTok was and how to use it. We did hip hop dance one day. We did, Christian came up with, if he had his own religion called Christianity, but spelled Krystianity, and
That's
what
brilliant.
he would make the world a better place. And he got all dressed up in a robe and glasses. It was so funny. So every day we shared a skill for about 3 months. Each one of us had to come up with something to share with the family.
And the bonding experience, in addition to maybe learning a skill, but I cannot imagine the lifelong memories being created learning Christianity with a K or how to juggle or something.
to be able, like, for the boys to watch us try and hip hop dance, for
Right.
me to have them in the kitchen. Oh, one day, because I'm the only girl, I'm like, we're doing face masks. So I did like skincare. And so I've got all my boys lined up at the kitchen table with masks on, and we're talking about face yoga. I'm showing them how to do face yoga, how to stay young. I mean, it was just the memories, the laughter, the photographs. And I think the memories created during this time are what are going to carry our families.
Mm-hmm.
We will remember this time for the rest of our lives for many, many reasons. But to look at this pandemic as happening for us and not to us, we're taking this chance to say how Coach Dar did the second talk, I believe, and it really impacted me. What would my 99-year-old self say? How would my 99-year-old self want to look back on this pandemic and hope that she acted?
Mm-hmm.
And I've asked myself that almost every day. What do I want to do? I want to be the curator of memories. I want the boys to come away, our family to come away closer together because of this time.
And we've also begun to learn about the impact mentally, collectively, that this pandemic has had on single moms, teenage boys, every cohort of the citizenry.
Yeah.
You really got and we have some professionals in that industry on this Zoom call. You as a family are doing therapy together, is that right?
That's correct. We are.
Do you mind talking about that a little bit? That's something I haven't heard of before either.
Yeah, not at all. We have an amazing somatic therapist, and we've been going to her individually for 4 or 5 years. One of the things that Eric and I hope that we have been able to teach the boys is that oftentimes being able to go and talk to somebody before you're having a problem, it's not necessarily about mental illness. It may be, and there may be some conflict that you need to solve, but we want them to be evolved men in the world, not afraid to have emotions. You swing high and you swing low. There needs to be a range. It's not all about everything looking like it's okay all the time. And so we've been going to her, and the boys actually asked if they could start going together to work on their relationship. And so 2 of them started, and they just want to talk about their childhood or ways that they can get to know each other on a deeper level. And then 3 of them went, and then they started inviting us to come. And so it has been the most beautiful experience. I think, we all get in our work, we get our master's degree or a PhD, or we take classes to stay up to date. We don't often spend time getting a PhD in our families. And I think that's kind of what we're having this opportunity to do. I'm getting a PhD in my boys and in my husband, in their emotional well-being, in their intellectual, learning how to play together, learning how to have conflict together. It's been incredibly healing.
Brad, I'm going to call on you for a minute and give Tasha a moment to catch her breath. But as a professional with a virtual mental therapy business, isn't that interesting to hear about the PhD in the family? Do you want to comment or react to that, Brad? Have you heard of anything like that? I hope Brad's still there. Okay, well, I'll keep going because I have many questions to ask. But if Brad returns, maybe can someone go wake Brad up, please? I was impressed with your family, Tasha, when we were in Chamonix, France, at a conference, and you and one of your sons, I think it was Christian.
Yeah, Christian.
You 2 were on a panel talking about family legacy. It was kind of in the context of family business, but just transitioning kind of the family ethos to the next generation. And I was so impressed with how mature he was. I think 19 at the time. Mm-hmm. Was this something you and your husband purposely tried to pursue early on, or does that just happen because he's a gifted young man? It was really impressive.
Thank you. I'm so proud of the boys. I think that we've really tried from an early age to help them understand the concept of the give back of 10%. So if we are teaching them by our actions that we're responsible 10%, if not more, of what we're making, and it's your time, your talents, your giftings, like it doesn't necessarily have to be financial and money.
Right.
That there's just a responsibility. It's a give back to the world. What is the point if you're not making a difference for the greater global whole? And so we've always tried to teach them imagination is more important than knowledge. and that we are a community. So it's not me, it's we. Like, what's the greater global we?
Like every sentence, I got to interrupt you. I'm sorry. Every sentence is like a poster of inspiration. So I got to go backwards here. Imagination is more important than knowledge. That's terrific. I mean,
that's Einstein. It's an Einstein quote that they've learned ever since they grew up, because it's in every single one of Eric's programs. And
I love how you and your husband taught me as well. Creativity is kind of like a friend. And when you're a child, you hang out with your friend a lot, creativity in the metaphor. You're always being creative. And the older we get, the busier we get, the more responsible we become. We lose track of our friend, creativity. And then we have a major problem in our life or some transition. And then we go back to our old friend, creativity. And I can see you two live that way, and with your kids as well.
We really have tried to do the best we can. We certainly fall under, I think you do what is the easiest. And so we always go back to what we've been taught in school. Sit in a straight line. There's one answer. Everybody has it. You're affirmed for that. But really early on, we started with these activities. We did Crazy Daddy Time.
Crazy Daddy Time.
Crazy Daddy Time. So we would surprise them. So we would go outside and say, we're going to have a costume contest. And then we'd give them each a can of shaving cream. And they had to figure out themselves like what they were going to look like. We did, okay, we're going to have dessert first. And we put this big, huge cake on the table. But the only rule is you cannot use a fork and a knife. So they had their hands behind their back and they're eating, you have to have your cake or you can't have your vegetables. I mean, we would wake them up in the middle of the night and take them to, or not in the middle, but after they went to bed and take them out to the movies in their pajamas. Just this idea of how can we take them from a place of rules, which we had rules in our house, but also creativity, awaken this childlike creativity. And we try and go back to it when something comes up, but the creativity is like, you haven't been here for years. And so we wanted to have them have a place in their minds and in their like somatic bodies where they understood and recognized how to go back to that childlike self, that imaginative self.
Brad Rex tells me he's back. He was allegedly taking a business call. Who knows? But Brad, a few minutes ago, we were just talking about, I don't know if you heard, that she has her family going through therapy together and the benefits of that. And I'm not familiar with that. I wondered if you had heard of that. It's just really an interesting way to get a PhD in family, as Tasha put it. Have you heard of such a practice?
Well, of course. Oh yeah, of course. I mean, anyone can do family therapy. We do it all the time for folks with our company. And the great thing now with people doing it by video is the family members don't have to be in the same location. Right. So
yeah,
just
so
like
if they
we're
live all over the country.
now,
yeah,
exactly. And so yeah, it's incredibly helpful. And a lot of times a person's issues, and I'll pick one I'm pretty passionate about, which is addiction, right? Well, oftentimes addiction is caused by a dysfunctional family situation, or it can be supported by the family, oftentimes inadvertently. So actually in our addiction treatment program, we do treatment for the family as well. We do family counseling sessions a lot
for the enabling. Okay, right.
So yeah,
Great.
no, I highly recommend it, and particularly in the current environment we're in, where everybody's living together and under a lot of stress, and I mean, there's a huge need right now for people to be doing that, and you'd be amazed at where it can take your family, over time. So
thanks, Brad.
Yep, sure.
Doug, you're an extremely creative human being, like Tasha. I feel like you two are cut from the same cloth. She's not like your typical like Wall Street friend and financier that you usually hang out with. She's more your speed, wouldn't you say, Doug? How do you think about some of these practices she's put in place with her family and her husband?
I think it's absolutely wondrous and wonderful. I have this chart I use in my class, and it's really interesting. It looks at kids like age 1 to 3 and then charts what they do in their life. One of them is asking questions. Like the average 3-year-old asks about 150 questions a day. And then you see less and less and less questions. they go on. Then you have creativity the same way. And I just think it's fantastic what you're doing, because I think creativity enables you to solve problems that have defied a lot of people. You know, I look at, you mentioned Einstein. You know, he got his best ideas when he was playing the violin, because it was a whole different way of his brain connecting to things. So I love this. I think too often we've compartmentalized. So a couple questions I had for you, Tasha, was what's been the biggest learning, or maybe the hardest learning for you about Tasha during this time?
Wow, that's a great question. I actually think for me, it has been the ability to say to my family, your emotions are not the boss of me.
Oh, wow.
I think as the sole female in a house of all males, I want everyone to be happy. I try and Pollyanna everything, and because I'm trying to keep positive. I'm trying to say, we're going to make it. We're going to be okay. Let's have happy memories. The biggest learning that I've had about myself is that it's okay for me to cry. It's okay for me to freak out. It's okay for me to be angry. And they are big and bold enough to handle that. I can be myself. The most important thing that I can do for them as their mom and a woman and a leader in this house is to show them that emotions are okay, that conflict is okay, that I'm looking for range, not positivity all the time. That's been a big piece for me. It's really difficult.
Thank you for that candid response. A famous person asked two questions I'd like to ask you. If you could respond quickly to each of these. What lights you up and what breaks your heart?
I was going to ask that.
Oh,
you're the chairman.
No, it's been asked.
Yeah.
We can't unask it now.
Right.
What lights me up is the future of our millennials. I sit around with these 19 through 25-year-olds like during this COVID time and ask them questions. What do you think about the coronavirus? Who are you going to vote for? What do you think about the racial injustice that's happening? Their ideas and their hope for the future is so inspiring to me. That generation, if we can let them loose and let them solve our problems, I am so hopeful for the future because of that. And so I want to support and encourage and do whatever I can to midwife them coming into this world. They are not scared. They are not worried. When you put them in a position of like allowing them to tell you the truth about what they think, it is just fascinating. So right now, that's what's lighting me up. What breaks my heart is the division that the coronavirus, the political environment, and even Black Lives Matter movement, the division. I'm so much more interested in what do we have in common than what do we have in, what is the difference. So one of the things that we've been trying to do as a family is have really difficult discussions. And say, why do you think that? Like, that's so interesting to me. Tell me why you think that. I would rather understand why someone is on the opposite side of an issue than I am than need to be right about it. I am so done being right. It breaks my heart, the vision that I see in our country right now. I wish there was a way that we could say, hey, I have a mom, you have a mom, great, let's start there. Like, we have that in common. It doesn't matter if you're a Democrat or Republican, if you're on one side of the coronavirus or the other. What do we have in common and how can we lift each other up?
Good.
Terrific.
Sounds like Rob, your life's work, a lot of it.
Rob First, you do this every day, trying to build bridges, right?
Yes, trying to build bridges, absolutely. Right now from North Carolina on vacation, so.
Thanks for
what
tuning
you
in.
just said was music.
Well, that's good.
There really are doorways in which we can do it, and it's great you've internalized that.
Yeah, thank you. Restorative love. I think it's the only way.
What do you mean by that restorative love? That I was posing that question to you as well. Like, what is restorative love in the context of what we're talking about today and your family?
Yeah, I think this is something I learned from Richard Rohr when I was doing the living school. There's retributive love and restorative love. And the retributive love is you did something wrong, you're going to be disciplined or punished for it. Everyone's going to know about it. And then we're going to try and get you to see what you did wrong and then make you right again. Restorative love goes the backwards, the opposite direction. It comes and it says, what happened somewhere in your childhood? What sort of systemic injustice happened? Where were you coming from that made you act in this way? And kind of seeing that person as a child, and being able to look at forgiveness in the way of, we all were perpetrators. I took some part in the problem that happened. What is my role? And because I know grace has been given to me, how can that grace overflow onto you? So restorative love is loving somebody back into who they were actually meant to be by taking time to understand what it was that took them in the wrong direction in the first place.
Wonderful. And do you get inspired by individuals you read or podcasts you listen to, or where does this curated resulting content in you come from?
Yeah, I spent 2 years with Richard Rohr in the living school, and James Finley. They were amazing teachers. I did a year with Lynn Twist, who Doug introduced me to. She's part of Pachamama Alliance and the Soul of Money, a trip to Ecuador with the indigenous tribes there. It was an amazing time. Paula D'Arcy is another great teacher of mine that I've done many retreats with. And then recently I did a vision quest right before my 50th birthday, where you go for 10 days, you're completely unplugged out into the wilderness, and you spend 4 days solo, no food, nothing. You have a sleeping bag, a journal, and water for 4 days, just you out in the wilderness. And that was a really transformative, amazing experience for me.
Just you, not in a small group.
No, just me. You start with the small group for 10 days, and then the 4 days you're on your solo experience, and you go all out by yourself away from everybody for 4 days. Just you in a sleeping bag, no tent, just water in a sleeping bag. You're fasting from food, but you're also fasting from technology, from people, from anything to do. That's really truly where I learned what was on the other side of boredom. And what was on the other side of fatigue, because after fasting for 2 days, you're so tired you can barely move, and your body slows down, and you begin to notice and see things that you wouldn't have seen otherwise. I'm a seeker of experience.
I just received a really good question. If we can't go into the desert for 4 days by ourselves and not eat, what would you recommend all of us on this call do to find the space on the other side of boredom? Is there tips you like to give others to try to find these new ideas or to begin the creative process?
Yeah, I think if you can take a day and it's called a medicine walk, meaning the earth is going to be your medicine. So set aside a day, tell somebody where you're going to go, and you are not going to take your phone with you. Like, you've got to just disconnect from technology. And whether it's 4 hours or from sunrise to sunset, where you're going to go outside in nature and you're just going to walk. You're just going to be a book.
We all can do that.
Yeah, you take a journal just to record your thoughts, but see what happens. It will not take you very long. It'll take a half an hour before you're like, wait a second, I can't check anything. You need to give it a couple of hours to unplug enough for your body to slow down. If you can go from sunrise to sunset, it will be a transformative day for you.
That could even be a good activity for our PathNorth team just to do, and then share what we come up with after our day of meandering. That's like almost like a retreat, even though we're not all together in the same place.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
One day with yourself. We're so afraid of what happens in the silence as the voices in your head start coming, and most of us are running from those voices. So to let those voices wash over you and find out what happens on the other side of it is so important.
Tremendous. Does anyone have a comment or a question or a reaction to Tasha's wonderful sharing here?
I was thinking of the quote, "Not all who wander are lost."
It's true.
And our friend Philippe Bourguignon is always encouraging us to meander and just take different paths. If you're always like walking to the office and go home in different directions or everything.
Yes.
It's really inspirational. You're making me challenge myself to try to get more creative. I can't just say I'm not creative and throw in the towel, Tasha. So thank you for that.
One of my favorite stories that I recently heard about Einstein is there was a group of children that were visiting him, and the little boy raised his hand and he said to Einstein, "How can I be as smart as you?" And Einstein looked at him and smiled and he said, "Read fairy tales." And the little boy kind of smiled, and then he raised his hand again and he said, "How can I be smarter than you?" And Einstein looked at him and he said, "Read more fairy tales."
Wow.
And I think that's one of the things that really has been a game changer for me during COVID. I have re-picked back up books from my childhood: The Secret Garden, Narnia, some more C.S. Lewis, J.R. Tolkien, J.K. Rowling. Like, have some fun, find the child in yourself again and go back and read those. Madeline L'Engle, she's another one of my teachers. I adore her. Read books that help you imagine a bigger story for yourself, but you've got to put yourself in that position again.
Give yourself a chance to do it right. Anne, do you want to ask your question? I received it. Anne Fitzpatrick, do you want to pose your question? You got to go off mute.
Okay. Did you by any chance have 3 enormous butterflies at Disney World in Orlando in February?
No, that wasn't me. I wish it was.
They had there was a public art forum there and people were standing in front of it. When I went on your website, Seth was kind enough to send out, information about you, and I'm an artist too. And I love what you're doing, and they're beautiful, to see people just embracing that moment. And they had a wall of butterflies at Disney this year and people were doing that. There wasn't a philanthropic component then, but
I love that. I mean, I think street art, and as artists, we're all taking ideas from each other. So I think any time that you're inviting somebody into art to participate in it, it's really beautiful and exciting.
Your work is extraordinary. Yeah.
Thank you, Anne. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Tasha, for sharing some of your life. You're such a slacker. I wish you would get up and do more and not just sit around all day. Wow, it's impressive. But if you have any closing comments or encouragements for us, all of us seeking to become more creative.
I just thank you for having me. It's an honor to be asked. And I think I would say, just go, if you have your family around you or some friends or a group that you're meeting with, ask those 2 questions and find out what comes from it. Ask them what lights you up and what breaks your heart. You'd be so surprised at what you find out about people. And I think that when we know about people, what lights them up and what breaks their heart, as human beings, we just want to help each other. And so it's putting it out there in the world. You begin to have conversations that allow you to go do whatever the thing is that you're supposed to be healing in the world. You'll find it out through those conversations. So I would encourage you to ask those 2 questions to the people in your life right now, find out more about them, and figure out, again, ways to build bridges with anyone that you have a disagreement with, or you're on the other side of the story. Ask them questions about why that's what they believe, and just learning about them. I think education is so important right now.
And listening. So if you ask the question, we have to be willing to listen and not interrupt their answer. Too often I hear people, it's not even a Q&A, it's just like a shot and a shot back across the bow. So I really try to become a better listener every day, and I love people who are willing to listen to others. It's a rare talent, I think, today.
I agree.
But we've all listened to you today. Doug, do you want to wrap us up with any other comments or ideas, encouragements?
No, great job, Adam, in your interview. And Tasha, that was just terrific and inspirational. Thank you so much. I was thinking about it. It's really an odd thing we do as parents, because we expose our kids to all this creativity. We want them to take ballet lessons, art classes, play an instrument, piano, whatever it is. And then many times we fall away from that. So I found an interesting thing. I was talking about creativity in my MBA class, which I'm getting ready to start up again this Monday and teach. But I said, how many of you had something you utterly loved when you were growing up? It could be you love writing poetry, you liked cooking, you like playing the piano, you love painting, whatever it is. Everyone in the class raised their hand. I said, how many of you are still doing it? I think it was 3. And I said, why is that? And here's my takeaway of why we become less and less creative and more risk adverse. Because creativity forces you to paint on a larger canvas and to get comfortable with ambiguity and things that are showing up that are surprising. And my takeaway is we live in a celebrity culture now. So if I play the guitar, I've got to play like Jimi Hendrix because I'm told I need to be famous. If I play soccer like you did, Adam, I need to play on a level so I could play for Arsenal someday or one of your other favorite teams. But we unfortunately do that with people, and our passions die away from us because we don't continue them. And I remember one time a really good friend of mine, senator from Illinois, Mark Percy's father, Chuck Percy. It was really interesting. At 75, he decided he wanted to play the piano. And I said, that says more about him, that he's not afraid to fail and learn and try things. So anyway, I come back to you, Tasha, and I said, what does it take to be creative? It takes not fearing failure, not fearing experimenting and making those things our friend. So I think we need to rediscover the things that made us come alive when we were kids. So some of you maybe are in your 70s. Maybe you need to dust off your ballet shoes and start doing it again. And if you want a little inspiration, look up on the internet the world's oldest yoga teacher. And I think she's 98 now.
Yeah.
She teaches, and it isn't like fake stuff. She has an intense yoga class. But what I found amazing, at 89, she took up ballroom dancing. And I thought, why wouldn't somebody do that? And it's because of all the prohibitions. I'm not going to do it well enough. We have all these monitoring devices in our brain. But I would urge us to take that away and just, if you used to draw as a kid, start fooling around drawing, start painting, start doing crazy stuff. So thank you, Tasha. You've expanded us. Awesome. I love you and love what you do. It's great. So with that, let me shift it back to Seth, who's going to tell us what's coming up next.
So tomorrow we have a Morocco Experience Reunion Cocktail Hour at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. And then next Wednesday, July 22nd at 1:30 p.m. Eastern Time, we'll have a discussion with Hoffman Institute Foundation founder Raz Ingrasky. And Doug, I'll ask you to give a little more color on that.
Yeah, so I'll tell you, so I was the beneficiary of the Hoffman process. They, you've all known in PathNorth, there's a big conversation that goes on about how we're all born into someone else's story. Peter Buffett said that at one of our meetings back in New York when we first started PathNorth. The Hoffman process helps people really understand and make sense of that story. The good, the bad, and the ugly. So Raz has been a part of that for a long time. You probably read about certain celebrities that have gone to this. There's all kind of people that have benefited from it, but it's really an interesting thing that gives you insight into yourself, the process that's really life-changing. So so I think it'll be really interesting. So. Okay, everybody. Well, thank you all for being on the call. And Tasha, that was great. If you need any more men, I have 3 in LA.
Bring them on.
Oh.
At this point, it doesn't matter.
Okay.
Thanks, Tasha.
Thank
Thanks,
you all.
Doug.
And the Morocco
Terrific.
friends, we'll see you tomorrow night. Those of you that were on the trip with us. That'll be great.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
John,
Hey,
get
hey,
ready.
Rick, now you come on. Rick comes on at the very end to get all of the accolades for this idea. Thank you, Rick, for being here.
Okay.
Dr.
Thank you,
Stevenson.
Tasha.
Bye.
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 Bye-bye.
Okay, bye-bye.
Doc, I will call you later, Doc.
Oh, whatever. Yes, call me.
I'm expecting for the information yet.
Okay, good. I'm
Okay.
anxious to help.
Okay, thank you.